watching us on the replay. We really appreciate you being with us, tuning us in here at the CVC Home Service Success Network today. This is always produced by the CVC Success Group, and we have a mission here, which is to give you the managers, the owners of the home service industry companies around America ideas on how to grow your business, how to get it to where you want it to be, where it's a business where you're happy in, where you're satisfied, and where you feel a sense of satisfaction for what you built. So every week we try to come up with a topic to discuss that we feel is something that may assist you. And today is no different. And what I've done, I've invited a guest on today. His name is Roff. He's been a guest previous, and Lee has recently done something that a lot of people may not have considered in order to update his fleet. And that is where he has leased his service trucks, his work vans. He has leased them. And we want to go into the details because there's a lot of things about this lease that he has that you can arrange that may make this a very attractive alternative for you. Now, before we go into this, I want to add this word here that you should always consult your financial advisors, your accountant, your CFO on these type of things. We simply want to give this to you as an option because maybe you don't have the funds to do what you need to do and you need new trucks. Let's face it, a home service business without vehicles, without equipment, basically is dead in the water. So a lot of times we see people that are needing to replace vehicles due to age or whatever, but because of their current situation, they've got to find for ways to alternative fund this. And so you've got three options. One is, hey, you can buy the vehicle. Maybe you're one of those companies that has solid resources and you can just call the dealership and write them a check. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Other ways to do it are to purchase the vehicle and finance it. Maybe you finance through the dealer, maybe you finance through a bank, maybe a credit union, or other sources of funding. But leasing is also an option for you. Now, in my career of owning a chimney service business, what we did is we leased vehicles and we leased our equipment. We leased vacuums, rods, brushes, chim scans, you name it. But we leased a lot of items because it made economic sense for us to do this. Now, we're going to talk today about the buyout at the end of the lease. What happens to the vehicle? How do you get into it? And that's the purpose. So Lee, appreciate you being here today, brother. So let's start out here's my first question is, tell us why you went with leasing.
We went with leasing because it was like an alternative financing source for us. Because our leases are such that once the lease is over, we actually own the vehicles. It also allowed us to have support. They have pre-negotiated maintenance rates for oil changes and repairs, everything else, so that we could get better rates on repairs. They also handled the gas cards, and they let us know, based on the value and the mileage of the vehicle, when would be the best time to maximize value as far as retail. So halfway through the lease, they may actually recommend us to sell it because something's happened in the market to make that vehicle more valuable so that we can flip it and get more value out of the vehicle. So it allowed us to roll in the wraps, the ladder racks, the shelving units. It's all in one thing, but it was kind of an alternative source of financing for us.
Gotcha. So whenever you lease these vehicles, they went ahead and installed the wrap on the vehicles for you. They installed the ladder racks on the vehicle, and this was all rolled into one lease. Do I have this correctly?
Correct. They rolled up ready to go first day.
They rolled up ready to go. So where were they prepped at? Where was the wrap put on your vehicles?
I actually got to dictate where the wrap got put on. So the place that I used to put on when we bought vehicles, they used that same place. They just worked through the leasing company and wrapped it into the lease.
Got you covered. So it was all wrapped in. So at the end of this, what's the buyout at the end? We end the lease. What's it going to cost you to retain ownership of these vehicles?
Zero.
Okay, so if we can ask, what is the company that you went through to lease? Because I thought it was Enterprise, but I just found out when before the show you went with another company because Enterprise has a requirement. I believe you said of 15 vehicles. So who did you talk to, or where did you go to get this lease?
We went to Holman, who does smaller lease contracts and smaller rates. At the time we did the lease, this was COVID time, it was hard to find vehicles at all. So they had better access to the actual vehicles. So that was a plus for us too, because they had sort of a stockpile of work trucks.
Okay.
But we went with Holman, and it was a Tommy Mello referral. That's how I get a lot of my referrals. And Holman just worked for us.
Okay. And let's go a little deeper. You did face one issue with these trucks, which actually was your fault, which was speccing the truck. You selected the truck that you wanted, but then when it came in, that truck had a shorter wheelbase than what you were anticipating. Am I correct?
Correct. Because what we initially asked for was the transits that had the long wheelbase and the highest roof, and they weren't available. And they told us that there was a Ram version that was with inches the exact same thing. So we went with that. And then when they came in, it was not the same thing. It was, enough shorter where we couldn't fit the same shelving units in the unit. We had to remove some shelving units just to make it work. And it already had our wraps on it, our ladder racks. We were past the point of no return.
Okay. So you moved your shelving from the previous vehicles into these vehicles.
No, we actually didn't, because it actually increased the sale value of the old vehicles when we sold them. It was new stuff, but we spec'd out the same shelves. And then when we got it, it didn't have the shelves that we spec'd out.
Okay, so this van, when it rolls in, and I presume they came in on a truck and unloaded at your parking lot, it was ready for the tools to go onto it.
Correct. Shelving units, dividers, ladder racks, wraps, all done.
Okay. So at this, I'm going to turn to questions. I want to identify a few things going into this discussion. So Josh, I'm going to go to you right now because you were kind of shocked, as we talked before, that there was no mileage limit on his leases. So what question comes to your mind?
Yeah. Every lease I've ever seen always had a mileage limit. And that was, you've been to my area. It's very rural. It's not uncommon to do over 100 miles a day of driving. You would chew through a lease in no time, a typical, 15,000 mile lease. So how does that kind of work? No mileage limits.
We were in the same situation as you. Houston is big. We also do Beaumont. That's like an hour and a half drive just to get to the service area. So we have a very large service area. Yeah. I was just honest with them up front, like, this is our issue. If this doesn't work, tell me now. And they said, oh, we got something that'll work. And they're like, we don't have a mileage limit at all. We're going to ask you to anticipate mileage so we can look at the value and how it will sink as you go on. But there's not like a hard limit. There's nothing like that.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're not going to see it have a big bill. It says, okay, you went over by 10,000 miles and, at 50 cents a mile.
In the contract we signed, and they're not all the same.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that they're all the same, but it's for us, they found something that would work for us.
Okay. Yeah. Josh, this is very similar to what I would call an equipment lease that we did a lot. And that's what we had on when we leased our vehicles. We had them on $1 buyout at the end. At that time, the lease company said there has to be an exchange of value at the end, and we could pick what that end of term was, and we picked $1 to buy out. So I don't, this is why I want to do this show, because I think there's some things here. Again, you need to speak to your accountant, your financial advisors, this kind of stuff, to see if this works for you. So Cheryl, let's go to you. In your case, you had a factory and you had leased heavy equipment for fabricating sheet metal. So what's your questions for Lee on this subject?
Well, I'm assuming since things have changed around as far as the bookkeeping goes, Lee, you're considered, as these are now, and a lot of people don't, so I'm bringing this up. You're now considered, your cost of these are expenses as opposed to the 5-year depreciation? Is it still the same? I'm sure it is, but just so people understand.
Yes, and it helped us at least in Texas, we pay property tax on our vehicles. So I don't own it. So I don't have to worry about the property taxes either.
That answer your question, Cheryl?
Yeah, I knew the answer. I didn't know if it had changed or not, but there are a lot of people that really don't understand the lease agreements and what it does to your financials.
Right, because we always on our books it was always treated as rental or renting, just like renting an office facility, same thing. So there was no depreciation over years, and rather you deducted the entire payment just like you were renting a facility or paying something else. And the thing about the property tax, that's another benefit here, that you're not paying the property tax. So my young friend Noah, what would be your question on this?
Sure. Jerry keeps talking about how, before, you decide which route you're going to go in buying or leasing your vehicles, talk to that financial advisor, that accountant. What did that conversation look like for you? Was this more you were driving the boat on deciding what was going to go on here, or you were talking to someone that gave you, more advice? I know you mentioned Tommy Mello was saying that. What did that conversation look like that kind of got you directed towards there?
I never trust myself, so I always double check all my stuff. But I looked at the monthly payments for purchase, if I paid for it in cash, what my expenses would be that way. And I have a accountant that I meet with monthly to look at numbers that I just throw ideas off of. And this was one of the ideas I threw off of her. She double checked the contracts, just to make sure, because I'm more than capable of making mistakes. So just trying to double check that I'm not being stupid.
Yeah, in the future, Noah, he will also spec out vehicles closer. That's the learning experience here, because when they come in, they're not as long, and it wasn't inches. This was feet, wasn't it, Lee?
It was about 1.5 feet. Yeah, and what we normally put with scaffolding, it didn't fit. So
Yeah,
now
that's
we
a
have
killer for an install truck.
Yeah, our old vehicles, we still have 2 vehicles that are paid for that are the install vehicles, and the new ones just do initial appointments. So we can't move them back and forth anymore.
Okay. So Lee, my question would be, what about the trucks you had? Did you have to sell them off? Did the leasing company take them? What did you do as far as the trucks that you had prior to the arrival of this new fleet?
You can do the answer is you can do whatever you want. You can even use those trucks, sell them, and use that as a down payment towards the lease if you want to reduce the actual payments. Like it's almost like the lease is financing. So the more you put down, the lower the monthly prices. But Holman has a program to sell your vehicles for you. So they show up, they just remove them, they remove the wraps, they do everything to maximize value and to sell them for you. So that's what I did. So
they removed the old wraps and all that.
They did all the work. All they did is show up, haul them off. They removed all the old wraps. They sold them for me. I didn't have to worry about any of it.
Yeah. So Josh, what do you think about this process? What do you think about leasing after listening what Leah said?
No, I'm very curious about the economics of it. Like, I'm still getting, I'm trying to figure out what's in it for the leasing company. How are they making their money versus us being able to buy? Is it truly that they're able to go to the source, cut out middleman, and that's where they make their money? It just seems a little too good to be true.
Well, I will tell you this, there is interest figured in there. I mean, when I did my leases, there is an interest figure. But again, it might be the best course of action, because someone may be in a very bad situation. In other words, we need trucks. We got to get them in here. So Lee, let me go back to a question. How long did it take for you to get the trucks after the deal was cut?
It actually took about 6 weeks. Once again, we were in a spot where just getting the vehicles was hard. And then arranging for the wrap company that I wanted to use, because they'd done all my other wraps, was backed up like 2 or 3 weeks. So it just depends on your vendors. and getting in the ladder racks because I wanted a specific ladder rack. They took a while to come in, so it took a little while.
So, but basically, the only labor you had was moving the equipment in there.
Correct. Yeah, I called them. We agreed to what we wanted. They delivered it. Done. I didn't have to eat all the billing for the wraps. They do all of it. So it just shows up ready to go, and you have a monthly payment.
Fantastic. So Cheryl, question for you. Any questions from you on this?
Or just one. Would you do this again if you had this back up and punt? A lot of people might like that answer.
I would. I would do this again. One of the nice things to it is they monitor the value of your vehicle. So if it were to spike or go down, they help you with that. Your gas card is also wrapped up into it. So the monthly payment goes a little up and down based on gas because they can track mileage and value. And you can go to their dealers, and they actually have told us, hey, this person is charging you too much for a oil change or whatever. And literally Holman will negotiate that down for you. So, and I'm sure, like Josh said, they're getting a piece of the pie throughout. I am sure from the gas car company, from these maintenance people, I have no doubt. And there is interest built into it. So they're making their money somehow, I'm sure.
But if you add all your time that it would take you to do all the things they're doing, that's a savings for you.
Correct. Yeah. It's just easy. And like I said, it's almost like a different type of financing.
Okay.
That's what I kind of equated to.
Okay, so Lee, we got a question came in from Sean Kramer, and his question is, how many vehicles did you lease? Also, can you do different types of vehicles at the same time?
Yeah, we started off with 4. That was our kind of entry thing to bring in. We sold 4, brought in 4. We weren't adding. We had vehicles that were starting to cost more to maintain. The wraps were starting to peel and bubble with our salt water and heat, and just rewrapping vehicles is incredibly expensive. So putting brand new wraps on older vehicles didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we did 4. And yes, you can get any kind of vehicles you want. They had box trucks. They had every brand, you name it. You can even tell them what dealership to go to if you have people to work with.
Really? So you've got a choice. You can go to, how do people find this Holman? Can you give us the website and put in the chat bar?
I can find it. I don't have it on the tip of my tongue.
Okay. So, but anyway, so it's a fairly, like I said, it's an easy process. But once again, I think, when I see people that are saving up the money, building a reserve, and they can just go and buy a new vehicle and write a check, that's a pretty good feeling. But a lot of people aren't there. I mean, it's like I see people that are procuring these new man lifts. That's a hefty investment. So you can lease any type of equipment. Like I said, I leased my chim scans. I leased my vacuums, believe it or not. My brushes and rods were in part of a package. I can remember we bought, like it was a $10,000 package. We put it through a lease, and it included Rovax at the time, chimney brushes, chimney rods, all kinds of things. We have leased a brake, a shear, pieces of heavy equipment. Those 2 pieces of equipment were about $80,000, and we put that through the lease. So Noah, what else would you ask What else would you ask Lee here today?
Cheryl and I were kind of on the same brainwave. I was going to ask too about, buying versus leasing. It sounds like you're very heavy on the lease side, which obviously, as we've heard today, makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it's great for easeability. Do you lease any other type of equipment or anything in your company? And if not, and you had the opportunity to, what equipment would you lease?
We don't lease anything. We purchase everything else. In my world, I would lease really large equipment. If it's smaller, and for every single person, small has a different definition. But we lease trucks. We don't lease anything else out. This was my first dip a toe into the leasing arena. That's why I didn't lease all my vehicles. We just started with 4. So we started with a fairly small amount of vehicles just to try it out. It's worked incredibly well. It simplified gas cards and everything else. repairs. It's made stuff a lot easier. So there is a savings just in time and pain.
Yeah. So Noah, your mother is posting in here. So Brandy has posted nothing is better than debit. And I think that means debt free, not debit free, but nothing's better than debt free freedom. And Brandy, we're not arguing with that one iota. I admire anyone that can do that. It's really impressive when I see people just write a check and they've got the reserves there to do that. But here's the issue. In the very real world we live in, it's like, Lee, let me ask you a question. 4 trucks. What would those 4 trucks cost if I were buying them equipped like you were? What would that cost me?
I budget when it comes to wraps and equipment, especially if they're new trucks, about $100,000 a truck.
Okay, so that would have been a $400,000 expenditure for you.
Correct. And for us, it was, even if you have the money, do you want to take that out of reserves and use it? And during the time I was doing this, it was COVID. Everything was going weird. Cash in the bank, I was trying to preserve.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it.
Right. And I think it's kind of, that's where financing come in, because a lot of people don't like to write big checks. I mean, I'm one of them. I'll be honest with you. You know, I hate to see a bank account drop like boom. You know, I can remember I bought a Corvette and I did pay for that Corvette. It wasn't a new one, but yeah, wrote a check for it. And it does feel good to be able to do that. But at the same time, everybody can't do that. I'm looking at business owners that don't have that kind of reserves. So what do we do? You know, and there you go. Brandy's going to add another one. Depends on if I can make more interest with money in the bank. Okay. So there you go. There's 2 sides to look at it. So anyway, but it's really good. It's a thought process. It's something I wanted to bring out and put on the floor today because I think it can help a lot of people. So let's run around one more time. Josh, you got any more questions or any input onto this?
Sorry, dogs. My question was going to be like, you know, you're saying you did it during COVID. Interest rates were next to nothing, you know, 2%, 3%. Did you take that into account with the leasing?
Yeah, I did. And for us, a lot of it was just acquiring vehicles. I had looked for months just trying to find vehicles in general. And I was being put on 1-year wait lists and everything else. This allowed us to actually get vehicles too. So weird time too. So different.
Yeah, so either not make money or make money.
Correct. Yeah. And I had vehicles that were, the wraps were peeling. I was spending a lot of money just to keep them on the road. It was getting more expensive. The holding cost was getting really expensive. Plus, I want for our brand, we show up, trucks look nice. They're not going to be peeling and everything else. That's our brand. If you're going to keep them nice and you're going to change out vehicles regularly to keep them that way, sometimes just spending the money doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah. And one of the things about it, I will vouch for that. His wraps, especially on the hood, because of that extreme heat that they have down there, they were looking rough. They were at the point you rub your hand across them and they would flake off, which wraps do after a period of time. So, Josh, does that answer all your questions, brother? Fan enough. Cheryl, what about you? You got any more questions on this?
I need for you to do something before I ask that. There is a message in private chat that he put in there that needs to be moved over to comments for the people.
Okay.
But yeah, the thing about it, and if Lee, you can agree with me or not, but you could, I know Josh was looking because it was COVID, but the other thing about that is you knew COVID wasn't going to last. So eventually things are going to go back up. So it's kind of a slinky situations of what, when, and where you do certain things. And you did it out of need of truck.
Right. It was a way, because I remember being at Tommy Mello's conference and going to them and just asking them, can you get us vehicles? Because we're on waiting lists. And they said yes. And they actually had them and converted. So in that time, it was a little different just because it was hard for us to get anything.
Yeah. So whenever you found out about this, Tommy was doing is leasing through Enterprise. Am I correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. So we don't know for sure, but that's a lot of trucks out there. And a lot of people wonder, how did he get all these trucks on the road? And how's he get them on as fast as he did? This is one of the reasons. He had a ready source, because Lee just said the key thing. Trucks were difficult to maintain. So, Noah, any more questions from you, bud?
More just a comment. I just want to, say one more time to my mom's comments. We are a Dave Ramsey household, so I think she's always going to argue for the debt-free style. But I was thinking, you mentioned, with your wraps, how, with leasing that they help you maintain that and keep you up with oil changes, stuff like that. And I just think that's really cool that you've taken, the value of the vehicle, just going, instead of just going out and buying it, it exists as an entity. You're also using this as an opportunity to, contribute to your brand and everything else as well, because they are helping you to maintain, like you said, those wraps on your trucks, the state of the vehicle, stuff like that. And that is contributing more value than just owning a vehicle to the everyday work style of your company, which is really cool.
Yeah. So, Lee, what about maintenance? Transmission goes out, motor blows. What about those things? Is that on you?
The repairs are on us, but there's pre-negotiated rates they negotiate nationwide,
Okay.
so that you get better repair rates because you're working through a network, like a buyer's network. I know a lot of the retail people have the buyer's networks. This is the same thing for vehicle repairs.
Okay. Okay. So I found the link where, and I moved it over. So I posted the link in the comments to this Holman. That's the name of it, right? Holman
Yes.
Holman Fleet Management Vehicle Acquisition and Leasing. So this is a simple process, and Lee, it is one that you would repeat when it's time to replace them.
Yep. Especially in the situation I was in. But yes, in the future, it saves us so much time with all the other details. Especially, you go to Tommy Mello, he can call them, and within weeks in Chicago, and he's in Arizona, they'll deliver vehicles to him.
Okay, so he opens up a new office. They're going to take the vehicles. They're going to ship them there, take care of everything. So they've got ready to go vehicles, ready to load the tools into them.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And for him, they negotiate. They negotiated for me too the sales price when they bought the vehicles. So
Yeah.
that initial price that goes into the financing calculations, they negotiate that down too, just because they have relationships nationwide.
So what's your planned lifespan for these vehicles before you will replace?
We replace them every about 4 years, 3 to 4 years. And it really depends on the wrap. That becomes the defining. The wraps are so expensive when you have 100% wraps that redoing it on an old vehicle doesn't make sense. I said that before. So that is our game plan to keep them looking nice.
Okay, got you covered. I understand. So if anybody else has a question, let me know. Let's speak up now. If there's anything else, Josh, Cheryl, Noah, any more questions out there? Okay, Lee. Well, brother, I appreciate your help today on this broadcast. And this is a lead and something that people should look at when it's time, because, hey, like I said, hey, I'll agree with Brandy. If you can write a check and be comfortable with it, hey, more power to you. But there's how many people got $400,000 laying around besides Brandy and Jeremy? I don't know, And after buying that new house, I ain't sure right now. No, okay.
We gotta go under a rock for a while. That house. No more trucks for a little bit.
Yeah. Are you concerned about your future or education program here?
My money is set aside, Jerry. My money is set aside.
I hear you. So anyway, Lee, appreciate you being on today. Appreciate you sharing this with our audience. And we appreciate you tuning in to us, whether you're listening to us live or on the replay. We appreciate the likes onto it. So if you feel like this is a value, hey, feel free to share this out to other people. Get the word out for us. And with that, we appreciate you joining us today. Next week, to give you some advice, to give you an update of what we've got a young man that's a chimney sweep company up in Maine. And he's going to be talking about some new hiring processes that he hasn't done. Josh, you made this contact. This is a friend of yours. You want to share a little bit about what we're going to talk about next week?
My friend that's coming on has had the best response to a Indeed ad that I've ever seen from anybody. From his response, everyone showed up for their interviews, which is amazing on its own. he said 30% of the candidates was complete trash. He got rid of them let's just say out of 100. He said of the interviews that he's had, 5 out of the 6 he would hire. And he's got people banging on the door, to hire him.
Well, what you're going to need to do is tune into us next week, and we'll have him on, and he'll share this new process. And to be honest with you, Josh shared this with me, and I said, okay. And I had a conversation with this young man yesterday, and to be honest with you, I think he's on to something here. So we're going to share that with you next week. He said he shared it with us, and then we said, hey, would you mind sharing it out? Josh was talking to him and invited him to be, and we're going to have him on next Friday, 12 noon Eastern time. So be sure and join us in. And with that, we appreciate you being here. We'll see you next week on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Have a fantastic week. Next week's the 4th of July, and hope you enjoy it. But we'll be on next Friday as normal. Appreciate you being here. Talk to you next time.